5 TSA officers attacked by a man running through security at Sky Harbor on Tuesday.
Airports are meant to be gateways to grand journeys, but sometimes they become the stage for heart-stopping chaos. There's no telling what surprises might unfold before you board your plane. If you think delayed flights and lost luggage are the worst of it, you're dead wrong. Just wait until you hear about 5 most terrifying airport security stories that we've compiled for you today. Let's dive right in. Number 5. 6.1 magnitude earthquake at Clark International Airport, Philippines. On April 22, 2019, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck the island of Luzon in the Philippines and caused significant damage to Clark International Airport in Pampanga. This quake was strong enough to be felt in nearby provinces and even as far as Metro Manila. The tremor gained a lot of attention because it affected a busy travel hub that serves local and international flights. Many travelers found themselves in frightening circumstances as parts of the airport building were damaged and debris started falling without warning. People scrambled to get out of harm's way, and some were injured in the process. In total, at least 7 people at the airport were reported hurt by falling objects or collapsing structures. What makes this particular earthquake memorable is how fast everything happened. Earthquakes in the Philippines are not unusual because the country sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area known for frequent seismic activity. Still, when one strikes unexpectedly, it can bring about confusion, fear, and chaos, especially in a crowded place like an airport. Passengers who were inside Clark International Airport, waiting for their flights, suddenly felt the ground move. At first, some people might have assumed it was a passing truck or a minor vibration. Then, the shaking intensified. Lights overhead began to sway, display boards rattled against the walls, and ceiling panels fell to the floor. Within seconds, travelers and staff alike realized this was not a typical tremor. People rushed to find shelter under tables or counters. Others tried to reach open areas. Alarms started to blare, and airport personnel sprang into action, trying to direct passengers towards safer spots. The chaos was amplified by the adrenaline and panic of not knowing if the shaking would get worse or if there would be aftershocks. In an earthquake, every second can feel like a lifetime, and it's hard to predict exactly what might collapse. The quake caused problems well beyond the arrivals and departures halls. Some airport equipment, such as check-in counters and machinery, got damaged or knocked over. Chairs and desks slid across the floor. Windows cracked, and bits of concrete and dust created a layer of debris that made it dangerous to move around too fast. A few people got cuts from broken glass. Others were hit by falling panels. For most travelers, it was a moment of total disbelief. One minute they were about to board a plane or grab a snack, and the next moment they were caught in a life-or-death situation. Once the ground stopped shaking, the real task began, making sure everyone was safe and accounting for the injured. Airport authorities switched immediately to emergency protocols. Staff moved people away from areas that showed visible damage, taped off those spots, and asked travelers not to return until officials declared them safe. Medical teams arrived to help those with injuries, and some individuals had to be taken to nearby hospitals. The power in parts of the airport went out briefly, forcing some areas into dim emergency lighting. Even with backup generators, it took time to restore normal operations. Flights scheduled for that day were cancelled or diverted to other airports in the country. Stranded passengers either had to wait for official announcements or find transportation to another airport if they needed to urgently continue their journeys. This disruption underscored the challenge of dealing with a major earthquake. Not only do you need to worry about the building collapsing, but you also have to plan for the logistic nightmare of grounding flights and ensuring passengers end up where they need to be. Images and videos soon emerged online showing the damage inside Clark International Airport. Clips of broken ceilings, fallen monitors, and terrified passengers went viral, painting a vivid picture of just how strong the tremors were. Many social media posts also captured the heroic efforts of airport staff who guided people to safety. Police officers, medical personnel, and volunteer responders set up aid stations to make sure everyone had access to water, first aid, and information. Their quick response prevented further injuries and kept people calm. Number 4. Desperate evacuations in Afghanistan. In August 2021, the world watched Kabul's Hamid Karzai International Airport become the site of a massive and frantic evacuation unlike anything most of us had ever seen. Thousands of Afghans swarmed planes and clung to departing aircraft in a final, desperate attempt to escape the Taliban's return to power. These scenes, captured on cell phone videos and news broadcasts, quickly circled the globe, illustrating the chaos and heartbreak that unfolded as the US military and its allies prepared to leave the country for good. This evacuation was part of a larger process triggered by the United States' decision to withdraw troops from Afghanistan after nearly 2 decades of military engagement. The Taliban, who had been toppled in 2001, began to retake territory at a startling pace in the weeks leading up to August 2021. By mid-month, they had reached the outskirts of Kabul. Many Afghans, especially those who had assisted Western forces or worked with international organizations, were terrified of what the Taliban's victory would mean for them and their families. Rumors of reprisals and brutal punishments spread quickly among local communities, pushing more and more people toward the airport in search of any available seat on an outgoing flight. As the Taliban advanced into Kabul on August 15, 2021, the atmosphere at Hamid Karzai International Airport transformed from anxious waiting to full-blown panic. Civilians rushed onto the tarmac, hoping they could find space on a plane before it took off. US military transport planes, surrounded by a sea of desperate people, tried to maintain some sense of order. However, the sheer number of men, women, and children running alongside the aircraft made it nearly impossible to keep things organized. American and Allied troops tasked with airport security had to make split-second decisions on how best to control crowds, while also trying to process those with valid travel documents. In the midst of this chaos, some Afghans went to extreme lengths. Several clung to the sides of a huge US Air Force C-17 as it taxied down the runway. Video footage showed people standing on the landing gear and gripping any handle they could reach. The horrifying result was that, as the plane ascended, some individuals fell to their deaths. Later, additional grim discoveries were made. Body parts found in the plane's wheel well once it landed at its destination. These events underscored just how desperate many Afghans were to flee their country before the full force of the Taliban's rule returned. Beyond that first day, the disorder at the airport continued. Families camped out near the airport gates, clutching their documents and whatever belongings they could carry. Military forces had to use tear gas or fire warning shots into the air more than once, simply to disperse the enormous crowds. As the clock ticked toward the August 31st withdrawal deadline, tension mounted. Each hour brought rumors about flights leaving, about new procedures for entry, or about the Taliban sealing off roads. Sometimes people who held valid papers and had been told they could leave were still unable to get past Taliban checkpoints. Others, with no official documentation at all, managed to slip through in the madness. Within the airport, US and Allied soldiers worked alongside embassy staff, volunteers, and others trying to manage the evacuation. Planes from various countries lined up to airlift their nationals and vulnerable Afghans out, Some flights left with every seat full, while others somehow ended up with empty seats, the result of conflicting instructions and the difficulty of verifying each person's eligibility in such a short time. Critics argued that the evacuation lacked coordination, pointing to the many Afghans who had done translation or security work for coalition forces but still found themselves stuck outside the airport gates. On August 26th, a suicide bomber carried out an attack near the Abbey Gate of the airport, killing 13 U.S. service members and up to 170 Afghans. The blast and the subsequent firefight deepened the sense of dread among the crowds. People who had already been terrified of the Taliban were confronted with yet another deadly threat. Many worried that another bombing might follow, or that the airport itself could be forced to shut down altogether. The tragedy added one more layer of suffering to an already heart-wrenching scenario. Despite all these hazards, the airlift continued. Military planes ferried tens of thousands of Afghans to bases in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Germany, and elsewhere. Commercial airlines were also brought in to help handle the massive load of evacuees. Scenes of relief mixed with despair. Inside aircraft cabins, Afghans sometimes wept with a mixture of joy and sorrow, while outside, those left behind watched planes depart with disbelief and fear about what their future held. The scale of the evacuation was immense. By late August, reports estimated that more than 100,000 people, including Americans, third-country nationals, and Afghans, had been flown out. Yet even this number felt too small for the huge crowds still hoping to leave. Images showed entire families pressed against barricades, waving passports and special immigrant visas in the air, trying to catch the attention of a soldier or official who might let them pass. Sometimes, parents handed their children over barbed wire fences in a desperate attempt to get them to safety, even if it meant they might not see each other again for a long time. At the end of August 2021, the final U.S. military flights lifted off from Kabul, signaling the end of a 20-year mission and leaving the airport fully in Taliban hands. For many Afghans who had not managed to leave, the conclusion of the evacuation brought deep uncertainty. While the Taliban made public statements about providing amnesty and allowing safe passage, stories of door-to-door searches and retaliation against former government or security officials circulated widely. A climate of fear took hold in many neighborhoods. Number 3. Mob of angry soccer fans at Budapest Airport. In May 2023, a tense scene unfolded at Budapest Airport when a group of angry soccer fans confronted English referee Anthony Taylor, sparking headlines around the world. The incident took place the day after Taylor officiated a major European final between AS Roma and Sevilla in the city. Tensions from that match had not cooled, and many frustrated Roma fans decided to vent their anger at the airport, where the referee was attempting to travel home. What followed was a chaotic moment that shed light on the darker side of fan behavior, the pressure referees face, and the challenges of maintaining safety in public places after high-stakes sporting events. Taylor's appointment to referee the final was no surprise to followers of European soccer. He had built a reputation as a firm but fair official, having worked at numerous top-tier matches across England and the continent. Still, any referee assigned to a final of that magnitude knows there will be unhappy supporters once the trophy is lifted. The match itself turned heated, with AS Roma fiercely battling Sevilla, who had a long history of winning European trophies. When Sevilla eventually prevailed, emotions ran high on both sides, but especially among the Italian fans, who felt certain calls had gone against them. Jose Mourinho, Roma's head coach, publicly criticized the officiating, which amplified the anger of some die-hard supporters. The following day, Budapest Airport became an unexpected meeting ground for those unhappy fans and the referee who, in their eyes, had cost their team the chance at glory. Taylor arrived with his family, hoping for a quiet departure after a challenging game. But word spread quickly that the official was inside the terminal. Cell phone footage captured the moment a small group of AS Roma supporters spotted him and began shouting insults. Almost immediately, more people recognized him, and the crowd grew larger. Even casual onlookers who had not attended the match got drawn in by the commotion, pulling out phones to record the unfolding chaos. In the videos that later made rounds on social media, Taylor can be seen trying to push a luggage cart while security personnel walk beside him, attempting to keep the crowd at bay. One clip shows fans gesturing aggressively, pointing fingers and chanting angrily. Some tried to move closer, prompting airport employees and security officers to form a loose barricade around Taylor and his family. Security staff began ushering them through the terminal, looking for a safe, private area where they could wait out the storm. Despite the heightened emotions, it appeared that nobody in the crowd managed to physically harm Taylor or his relatives, though they were clearly cornered and distressed. Airport authorities recognized the escalating danger. They called for additional security and coordinated with local police to control the situation. Officers arrived and managed to block the group from pressing any closer to Taylor, who continued to walk briskly with his family toward a restricted area of the airport. There they could remain safe until it was time to board their flight. Reports indicated that the incident lasted only a short time, barely a few minutes, yet it felt long enough to leave a deep impression on everyone who witnessed it. Travelers waiting for flights, staff working at restaurants and shops, and others simply passing through the terminal watched the drama unfold, many expressing disbelief that a referee would be targeted so openly in a public space. Once Taylor and his family were secure, the crowd began to disperse. Several individuals stuck around, arguing with airport officials or continuing to yell in the direction the referee had gone. Others posted their footage online, which almost instantly went viral. Soccer fans, sports journalists, and even people with no interest in sports reacted strongly to the sight of a mob surrounding a referee. Most shared disapproval of the fans' behavior, noting that referees must be allowed to do their job without fear for their personal safety afterward. Still, a few comments online defended the protest, claiming that extremely bad calls deserve an extreme reaction. Those voices, however, were overshadowed by condemnation from prominent soccer figures, news outlets, and the general sporting community. Number 2. Mob storming airport in Dagestan. In October 2023, an intense and unexpected scene took shape at an airport in Dagestan, a republic in the North Caucasus region. A flight from Israel was scheduled to arrive, and that fact alone stirred up a group of protesters who were not pleased with the plan. Nobody could have predicted just how quickly their protest would escalate, or how forcefully the crowd would break through the airport's safety measures. By the time the dust settled, travelers had raced back onto the plane in fear, and many parts of the airport bore signs of the chaos that had just taken place. The day started like most others, with airport staff carrying out their usual tasks, checking passports, guiding passengers to baggage claim, and helping arrivals find their way around. The flight from Israel was on schedule, and for a while, the airport atmosphere seemed calm. But soon, word began to spread outside the terminal that the plane carrying people from Israel was due to land. Locals with strong feelings about that arrival started to gather. What began as a handful of people soon grew into a crowd, and the tension in the air grew thicker with every passing minute. The protesters seemed driven by anger about the flight, though nobody had anticipated how large their numbers would become. Security personnel at the airport, used to handling everyday matters, realized they were in for a challenge when they saw a growing wave of people heading toward the main entrances. These men and women were no longer just a few individuals holding signs or chanting slogans. They were a serious group determined to make their presence felt. Clutching makeshift banners and shouting demands, they moved in a single direction, straight for the terminal doors. Once it became obvious the crowd intended to storm the airport, security guards did what they could to stop them. They locked doors, set up barriers, and called for backup. Yet their efforts fell short. In the span of a few moments, the protesters forced their way inside, smashing glass doors and pushing past security checkpoints. The noise was deafening, with the sound of breaking glass echoing through the corridors. Travelers waiting in the terminal suddenly realized that a full-scale invasion was unfolding before their eyes. Some huddled in corners, while others ran for safer areas, unsure if the crowd was simply going to protest loudly or if something worse might happen next. Even after this first breach, the protesters did not slow down. They surged deeper into the airport, searching for any sign of incoming passengers from Israel. Tension soared to new heights as the crowd approached the gates. Passengers who had recently landed, as well as those preparing to depart, found themselves caught in the frenzy. Airport announcements blared over the speakers, advising everyone to stay calm and instructing them to follow security staff towards secure zones. But calm was in short supply. Some people clutched their belongings, worrying about family members who might be separated in the chaos. Others glanced anxiously around, trying to figure out if it was safer to leave or to stay hidden. Security tried to block the passage to the landing field, but the mob powered past. Barriers that were meant to be sturdy proved no match for so many determined individuals. Before long, people who had only minutes earlier been outside the airport were now running across areas normally reserved for planes and ground crew. Witnesses described scenes of frantic shouting, with protesters calling out to each other, scanning every plane they passed. A few decided to film themselves on their phones, capturing the moment they set foot on what is usually a restricted zone. In the meantime, staff members and law enforcement scrambled to figure out how to regain control. As minutes ticked by and more security reinforcements arrived, the protesters lost some of their intensity. Many had reached the runway, and their initial goals seemed fulfilled in a chaotic way. The group, however, had also attracted attention from higher-level officials who were now rushing to the airport to address the crisis. Police in tactical gear worked to corral the protesters away from sensitive airport areas. Some people left on their own once they realized there was little else they could do. Others tried to hide within the terminal, blending into the ranks of regular travelers. Number 1. Various criminal activities. In recent years, a number of headline-grabbing crimes have taken place in these busy terminals, prompting questions about just how secure these spaces really are. They are filled with travelers from all walks of life, which means there's always the possibility of encountering situations you'd only expect to see in a movie. From people trying to smuggle illegal substances in shocking ways to sexual predators attempting to escape justice, the range of criminal activities is surprisingly broad. What follows is a look at several real incidents that unfolded at or near airports based on factual accounts. Each case shows that anything can happen in an environment where thousands of people come and go every day, each with their own hidden motives or secrets. One particularly memorable case involves a Canadian woman who tried to smuggle cocaine under a fake pregnancy bump at El Dorado International Airport in Bogota, Colombia. On September 12, 2023, the woman checked in for her flight to Toronto without showing any obvious signs of stress. After all, her backstory was that she was pregnant, and she likely hoped this would draw sympathy or at least prevent too many questions from airport staff. But an inspector noticed something unusual about how her belly appeared and decided to take a closer look. Not only did the fake belly fail to move naturally, it also felt colder and firmer than genuine skin and tissue would. A search led to the discovery of 2 kilograms of cocaine, worth an estimated $60,000, hidden inside the artificial abdomen. Authorities arrested her immediately. If convicted, she could face up to 8 years in prison, a harsh reminder that attempts to outsmart airport security can end with life-altering consequences. Another startling drug-related discovery took place on November 14, 2022, also in Colombia. 2 women were stopped at a security checkpoint when full-body scans showed suspicious shapes in their hair. At first, they tried to explain these as hair extensions or styling aids, but airport officials quickly realized that something else was going on. When they conducted a more thorough inspection, they found multiple vials of cocaine tucked under the women's thick hairdos. In total, authorities recovered around 2 kilograms of the drug, revealing a surprisingly bold smuggling method. The 2 women were detained on the spot. This incident highlighted just how creative smugglers can be in trying to sneak drugs across borders, and it underscored the ongoing battle that airport security wages against the infinite inventiveness of criminal networks. Even though many travelers take standard routes and carry only normal items, incidents like these show that some will go to extreme lengths to conceal contraband in places nobody would suspect. Not all airport crimes revolve around smuggling narcotics, though. One incident took place when a man attempted to steal luggage in the men's room. This event, captured on video, showed the suspect slipping into a bathroom with someone else's suitcase. A police officer showed up soon after, having been tipped off about the stolen bag. The officer found the luggage stashed in a corner of the restroom and waited calmly for the thief to emerge from a stall. There was a tense pause as the suspect realized he was cornered. The officer told him to come out and put his hands behind his back, and the man had no chance to make a run for it. The arrest happened on the spot, leaving the thief with nowhere to hide. This episode exemplified swift justice, thanks to vigilant airport staff and police who quickly tracked the stolen bag and apprehended the suspect before he could slip away. A far darker side of criminal activity involved a sexual predator who was hoping to flee the country. In one case, a man in the United Kingdom had been under investigation for sexual offenses involving a minor. Knowing he was in trouble, he tried to book a last-minute ticket to Ethiopia, hoping to escape before the authorities could catch up to him. Police, however, were alerted just in time. They rushed to the plane moments before takeoff and found the man in his seat, likely believing he was seconds away from disappearing to another continent. Rather than cooperating, the offender seemed startled that the authorities had arrived so quickly. Officers read him his rights and escorted him off the aircraft, while stunned passengers looked on. Later, it was revealed that he had planned to stay in Ethiopia indefinitely. Thanks to the swift response of local law enforcement, He was arrested before the plane could even leave the gate and ultimately faced court proceedings that led to a lengthy prison sentence. A separate but equally troubling story unfolded in October 2023 at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. A young traveler noticed a man sitting across from her who was acting suspiciously. Initially, it seemed like perhaps he was just making everyone uncomfortable by staring. But then the situation escalated. He began exposing himself. Fortunately, the young traveler had the presence of mind to record him on her phone, capturing proof of what he was doing. Afterward, she went straight to the authorities. By the time he returned to the airport for another flight, law enforcement was waiting for him. One officer calmly approached, confirming the man's identity and explaining that there was a warrant for his arrest. Despite the potential for a scene, the arrest itself was straightforward. He didn't resist, possibly realizing there was no point in fighting back when there was clear video evidence. Investigators later discovered that this wasn't the man's first indecent exposure offense, adding another layer of seriousness to the case and underscoring how vital it is for victims to report such acts immediately. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.